Hey, I want to welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Domann. I have a leadership expert as our guest today, Allistair McCaw. Allistair is by way of South Florida. He's a tennis man, but he's recognized as a best-selling author, keynote speaker. Seems like, Allistair, your three areas of expertise are leadership, team culture, and mindset. You've been doing this stuff for 30 years. You worked with a lot of athletes, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, a lot of amateur, Olympic, and pro athletes. I want to welcome you to Pro Mindset today.
Thanks so much for having me, Craig.
All right, Alice, let's jump right in. How did you get into the mindset space? Where did it start for you? Did it start when you were an athlete and competing, or did it start after that? When did you find that you had an amenity towards what's between our ears?
Yeah, I think those three things you mentioned, their culture, leadership, and mindset, all started for me at a very young age. Probably, if I can go back and pick an age, we're probably 7, 8, when I started playing sport more seriously, so to say, at that age, and wanting to be a champion. As you just mentioned in the intro there, tennis was my first love. Started off as a tennis player. We didn't come from a lot of money, so, we never had the coaching or the means to pay for all these things that sport involves when you get to a better level. But if I think back now, those three things that really have been a passion for me in my life, leadership, culture, and mindset, started way early. The mindset from the point of view of being an athlete and probably being my own biggest enemy. When I was a young kid, I had a temper and I couldn't control my emotions. And I think that got in the way of me progressing further in that sport for sure. So that's one of the main reasons why I wrote my book, Champion Minded, was, it's all about tapping into the mind. And if there's some advice I can give parents, and I'm sure there'll be parents listening to this as well, is, if you can teach your kid to control their emotions and learn how to deal with failure and setbacks at a very young age, that's a massive quality for later on in life. The second part was leadership and culture. Was even from a young age, I was fascinated. I played a lot of sports, team sports as well. I was fascinated by good leaders. I was fascinated by teachers that were good, coaches that were good from a very, very young age, captains and sport teams. Why some people wanted to follow certain people and others. And again, Craig, that started at a very young age. If I think back to 10, 11 years old, playing in football teams, soccer, rugby, cricket, those sports, growing up in South Africa, those are the main sports there. So those three things that have ended up being part of my life and being a passion for me in my life started very early. But of course, when you're 10 years old, you don't really realize that.
All right, let's jump into regulating emotion. I found as myself, my kids, the players I've coached, sometimes the most passionate, intense, talented players also struggle with regulating their emotions. What's the biggest tip you have? What did you learn through your own experience, number one? And number two, what is a takeaway that a parent can get on how to manifest and guide that energy in the right direction so that the young girl, young man doesn't have that emotional outburst?
Yeah. There's a great obstacle and challenge to kids that experience early success at a young age in their sports, where it's come easy to them in a way where they're the first pick, or they're top of their class or top of their team, for example. There's a study that's been shown in academics as well, is that the students that got C's in school, B's, C's, and D's, actually went further than the students that had straight A's because of their ability to have to struggle to get that C. And the same as in sports as well, is early success and not learning to deal with failure and deal with losing can be problematic later on. So it's important that if you're a parent of a kid who's good at what they do and good at sports, is to either with obviously consent and agreement of their coaches to maybe play them up an age group or a level, that they don't become complacent and think that everything's just easy. Everything just comes to them easily in their sport, for example. So that's an important aspect. Um, you know, kids that have struggled earlier on in their lives have gone on to achieve greater things because they understand the process, they understand what failure looks like. But definitely, as I mentioned just a little earlier, there is if you can teach your kids how to deal with failure and see it as a growth and learning, the way to success is through failure. With all the athletes I've worked with and successful people, Craig, I've never met one that hasn't had various adversities or failures throughout their life. If we look at Michael Jordan didn't make his high school team. That's a famous story. There was 50 kids at the trial and 15 were chosen and he wasn't one of them. At that stage, he was 5'10", so he couldn't even dunk. Michael Jordan could have given up or said, okay, this sport isn't for me. Simone Biles is another one, of course, the great American gymnast who has had adversity in her life. And, her mother suffered from addiction, so she had to be given up to a foster home. All these things have attributed to their success later on. But, that's not to say that you have to go through those traumatic things in life to be successful. It's basically teaching your child how to deal with failure, rewarding the right things. Are you just rewarding the wins and the successes, or are you rewarding what I term the right things are your behaviors, your effort level, your attitude, your respect towards your teammates and your coaches and volunteers, etc. That's where the real win is.
Allistair, here's, I think, the biggest challenge, especially for a lot of parents. They invest the time, money, resources into their kids' sport, and they want to see results, and they want to see validation. They want their kid to win medals. They want to win the tournaments. They don't want to spend the money and pay for flights and have their kid come back and say, "Hey, I finished last." And so I agree with you 1,000%. The majority of the people that compete in the Olympics for any given country are the people that were told that they weren't going to walk again. They were the slow, grower. They had to deal with some adversity, and it helped them create the identity that they needed to have to be able to strive for success, at the same time overcome adversity and failure. But I think, it's just that we live in a microwave society. Starbucks is very successful for a reason. Everybody wants to go through the drive-thru and have a hot, latte 20 seconds later. And so for parents that are mindful, conscious, and really do have their kids, and I think most parents do, but they really want to be intentional about the best interests of their child developing in their sport. You said playing up was one option. What are some of the other things that parents can do or emphasize so that their kids don't get burnt out and they don't have so much success early? They don't get bored.
Yeah, I think this might sound quite harsh, but I'm just going to tell it as it is. Is the parents that are hell bent on their kids being the best and not wanting the best for their kids. Those are the ones that have an ego issue in terms of that their pride is in how well their kid does on the sports field. And for me, that's very narrow-minded. And I don't apologize saying that either, because I've seen it for 30 years in my career and worked with some of the best juniors. And I'm in Florida, where it's full of wannabes in tennis and golf and so on and so forth, 10, 11-year-old kids. And it's great to follow your dreams. But, when you're the parent that's driving it, that's the problem right there. Of course, you've got to financially support the kid and get them to tournaments and practice and so on and so forth. But if the self-drive isn't coming from the kid themselves, then you don't stand a chance in the long run. I can't tell you how many good 13, 14, 15-year-olds I've seen in sports like soccer, baseball, tennis, cricket, and cricket as well. I know it's not an American sport, but it's at the end of the day, it's the same thing. You're playing a sport. Is that the parents are actually more invested in it than the child, for example. The number one thing that a parent should be focusing on is what are the tools that are going to give my child the best behavior the best chance of being a great adult. Forget about sport. Because really the foundation of a great athlete and a great sports person is a great person. That's where it starts. Because for the majority of their life, they're not going to be necessarily playing professional sports if they get to that level, which is less than, as you know, Craig, probably 0.03%. I don't know what the stats are exactly, but I know after college, that number drops off dramatically into the under 1%. So, what type of adult are they going to be? What type of person in the corporate world are they going to be? What type of partner are they going to be? Husband, wife, are they going to be? These are the important questions than just how good is my kid going to be in sports at the end of the day.
Amen, brother. Amen. No, that's exactly it. And for those guys and for those athletes that are...
Craig, I get it. Every parent wants the best for their kid. They want their kid to be the one that, that's chosen in the team and to be a starter and so on and so forth. But, if that's what your focus is as a parent, you've got the wrong focus. Teach your kid to be the best on the bench. Teach your kid to handle, we just talking earlier on in the podcast about adversity and failure and dealing with life. That's real life. That's real life out there. When you're trying to protect them too much and coddle them and bubble wrap them, for example, what are you bringing up? You're bringing up kids that can't deal with hard conversations. You're bringing up kids that can't deal with failure. All these things that later on in life are massive.
No, I 1000% agree. Being in the pro business for many, many years, ultimately the guys that do the best are the ones that are the best people. That can handle and understand that the team is trying to replace them, is trying to draft somebody over them, trying to find somebody cheaper, healthier, younger.
Yeah.
It's part of the business, right?
I heard something very, very interesting the other day, Craig. I work with a lot of professional soccer teams in Europe. And this goes for coaches and players at the professional level, is that you're only 3 performances away from losing your place or losing your job. And it's pretty accurate because, especially, I know this is an American podcast, but I'm sure you've got listeners all over the world. But in English Premiership soccer, for example, a manager has 3 losses in a row. They're almost on their way out. They're almost getting fired. Players as well. You have 3 or 4 poor performances in a row. You're also on your way out. There's no escaping the public eye and social media because you've got millions tracking your performance. Back in the day, Craig, and you're probably my era as well, age-wise, you'd get away with it because it would be a small little clipping in the Monday newspaper that nobody would see of how bad your performance was. Now you're exposed. You're exposed live and on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and absolutely everything. YouTube probably as well. So yeah, it's how do you deal with that? Those are the lessons that great parents, great teachers, great coaches are saying of how you deal with these things, how you deal with the trollers, the haters. People are, this might sound very pessimistic, and I write books on positivity, but the reality is there's a lot more people that want to see you slip up and fail than want to see you succeed. And that's just the reality of life.
Misery loves company.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I agree. In the NFL, you might be 3 games away from losing your spot. First time you have a bad game, it's like, oh, bad bounce of the ball, tough game. The wind or the weather elements were the issue. They kind of chalk it up that really wasn't his performance. But it was, but they set an excuse. The second time you do it, it's a wake-up call for the manager, the head coach, the front office. And they go, okay, which guy who is this guy? Is he not who we thought he was? And if he's not who we thought he was, we got to give him a short string. So then you play him again. He does it again. Then you replace him because it's like, well, we thought we picked the right guy, but obviously we made a mistake. This guy wasn't up to the pressure, the limelight, whatever you want to call it. So we're going a different direction. So I do think um, the way that decision makers think, coaches think, they do give you 3 shots, but after the 3rd shot, they move on. And in the NFL, the
especially at the elite level. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, no, at the elite level, a lot of guys have guaranteed contracts, but most guys have 1-day contracts. Contract may say it's for 3 years, but it's they can terminate it at will, so it's effectively a day-to-day job.
Yeah.
So I think the pressure that people don't expect when they get to the pro level is you got to show up every day.
Yeah.
You got to bring it every day, whether it's a practice day, a walkthrough day, an off day, meetings, travel day. It doesn't matter. It's just not game day. You got to show up.
Yeah, 100%.
Kids can learn when they're teenagers that if they're uber talented, they've got tremendous ability. They might have a gap in skill level compared to their peers. They don't have to show up all the time and they can get away with it. And then they keep moving up and then it catches them.
Yeah, Craig, 100%. And I know we've spent the first, 15, 20 minutes on this podcast talking about dealing with adversity and failure, but I think it's massive. The best athletes and performers I've worked with have a different relationship with failure and adversity. That's why they are the best performers, if I can put it that way, because there's a heck of a lot of guys and girls with the skills and the abilities and the talent and so on and so forth. But how many are able to handle getting dropped and the setbacks and the failure? And that's why I go back to what is the number one thing I believe parents can do for their kids is teach them how to deal with adversity and failure. How does your kid respond when they're dropped to the bench? Have you empowered them the tools for them to confront the coach in a respectful way and have a conversation of, Coach, why was I dropped? What do I need to do to improve? What do I need to get into the team? What do I need to work on, etc.? And having mommy or daddy calling the coach at 8 p.m. at night or confronting them even worse after practice, which is the worst time you can confront a coach, is during practice time. Those are the skills we're talking about. If you can provide a child with those, trust me, those will take you way further in life than how well you throw a ball or how well you catch a ball.
I would even go a step further, Allistair, from the standpoint of parents should have no contact with the coaches. That's a given. But I also think that players shouldn't either. And here's why. Once you go to the coach and say, hey, coach, what's the gap between where I'm at and where I need to be? Because I don't like the situation I'm in and I want to be in a better situation. I want to be off the bench on the field. I want to be playing a different position. I want to be higher in the batting order, whatever it may be. As soon as you have that conversation as a player, I don't care how political you are. I don't care if you act like you're a 40-year-old and you're 14. That's the beginning of the end of your relationship with that coach. What I have learned is that the players already know. They already know the answer to the question. They just need to ask themselves instead of ask the coach. And if they don't know, all they got to do is show up the next day in practice and have some awareness about how they're doing what the coach wants them to do. What is their standard compared to what the coach's standard is? Coach has expectations. How are you meeting those expectations? And listening to how the other players are getting coached too. Because the coach, no coach worth their salt doesn't communicate his or her expectations and what they expect out of this particular player at this particular time, in this particular position, in this particular situation. Problem is, players are not there. They're there physically, but mentally they're thinking about playing video games when they get home, thinking about hanging out with their friends, thinking about going to a movie, and they're not mentally there, and so they miss those messages. So that's what I was saying, because every time
say, Craig, if I can, I'd respectfully agree and disagree with you there, is that I believe feedback's important, and I believe it's important to ask for it. And this is, as I say, we're going to have differences of opinions, and that's fine. But I believe it is important for an athlete to ask what they need to do. And yes, maybe most of the time they know that maybe their attitude and their effort needs they need to raise their level there, for example. But there might be some technical or tactical aspects they need to have work on. But I don't think it's generally all the kids that are like that. There is the ones that are locked in and focused and wanting to be coached and wanting to understand. They might take a little bit longer to learn things as well. They're not as talented or they're as quick to catch on to things. But I think that dialogue between coach and player is important. I agree with you to an aspect of the parents with too much involvement, but then on the other hand, I do believe there is a place that the parents are part of the triangle, the coach player relationship, that they need to be kept in the loop all the time. But just with regards, either certain behavior that can be improved or whatever. But yes, I agree with you on the aspect of that. Not everything has to be discussed and transmitted and communicated between everybody all the time, because quite frankly, a coach is dealing with, if you're in a football team, and you'll know this better than me, how many players in a high school football team? 40, 45 on the squad? I've no clue.
Probably at least.
Now, is it realistic to deal with 45 parents on a weekly basis? Absolutely
No.
not. Or 45 players on a weekly basis? Absolutely not. So, it's important to and you spoke about expectations as well, which is a massive one. And I'm glad you did, because those need to be clear from day one. Otherwise, you just leave yourself a heck of a lot of work to do, and frustration. Where are the boundaries? Can parents come to you after a practice? Me, I don't think it's a good time to have discussions with parents after practices. Do you have an availability of 1 hour a week on the phone? Whatever that may be, for them to have some dialogue, because I do believe they have the right to know what's going on, or to have some, to ask you a question as a coach. I mean, you might disagree with that, Craig, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Well, it's not a black or white issue. It's not, do you ask or do you not? I think the better course of action is to turn on your listening ears in practice and in meetings, and listen to what the coach's expectations are. Listen to the constructive feedback that you're getting. The person in front of you, let's say you're on the bench, the person that's playing the position that you want to play, that person is getting constructive feedback. The coach is sharing the cheat code. Whatever it takes, the coach is sharing it. Coaches don't play hide and seek with players. The problem is players shut down mentally and they don't hear it. So my thing would be,
why do they shut down, Craig? Why do they shut down?
For a variety of different reasons. I think one of them is they don't know how to deal with adversity. When things are not going the way you hope they would go, people have a tendency to shut down. It's an identity killer.
You don't think it's a coaching aspect as well, of how you bring your message across? That each individual has a different way of handling adversity and receiving feedback or communication. Everybody works in a different way as well. So wouldn't you also say that coaching is partly to blame for that?
I think everything's a case by case, and I would say that there's never been a perfect coach. And so coaches have blind spots too. And so not every coach communicates everything they expect in the best way for every kid to understand it. I'll stipulate to that for sure. But what I'm talking about is, if I'm consulting with a kid or a family and they're frustrated with their playtime, that I also work with coaches, and I know how coaches respond to that. And coaches put a barrier up, and they throw that player in a category of, hey, it doesn't matter. He's never going to be happy. He doesn't see himself or herself like I see him or her. And we got a problem. And so let's say that's in the beginning of the season, and it's a 4-month season. It's going to be a long season unless the person in front starts performing poorly or gets injured. So if that person stays healthy, it's a battle for that young person to stay engaged when they're not where they thought they would be. And so if it does come time to go talk to the coach, my recommendation would be something like this. Let's say you're the coach, Allistair. Hey, coach, I just want you to know I respect you. You're doing a great job. I'm understanding that these are your expectations for the position I'm playing. This is what I'm hearing you tell us. You told us this in the opening meeting at the beginning of the season. You've been telling us all season long. And you know what? This last week, you've been really harping on such and such. And I'm dialed in on that. And I'm not comparing myself to the person that you picked to play in front of me. I'm just comparing myself to how I'm performing and how I'm preparing for your standard. And I feel like, unless I may have a blind spot, Coach, I feel like I'm doing it. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Right.
And so I'm not condemning, I'm not demeaning, I'm not doubting, I'm not giving you an ultimatum that I need to play because I'm the dude. I'm just going, hey, this was your mission. I've jumped in 10 toes down. I'm all in.
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily seeing the playing time that I would expect, given the fact that I'm doing what I'm doing.
All right. So there's the first thing. Let's get back to how I'd respond to that, Craig. Is first of all, the expectations at the beginning of the season playing for me would be that you're not guaranteed playing time. I will do my best to provide playing time. Now, of course, it all depends. Elementary school, high school, you need to let players have some playing time. But the fact of life is life isn't fair, and some will be getting more time than others. Here's the fact of the matter is that if there's 11 players in a team, let's just say we're talking about soccer. There's going to be 11 players that love me on Saturday because they were selected. There's going to be 7 substitutes on the bench that like me. Okay? And there's going to be another 7 players that didn't even make the bench that are going to hate me for that weekend. And
so true.
And with those 11 players come 11 happy parent couples. With those 7 players on the bench, there's 7 kind of who like me parents, and the 7 that didn't make the bench that weekend, there's going to be parents that have a problem with me. But this is where the expectations from day one are as important in terms of there should be no promises of how much time your kid is getting to play. That is a fact of life. However, like you said there, Craig, Coach, I've been doing everything you said for the last week. I've been putting in the effort. I've been even getting here earlier than normal. I've been working on my game afterwards when the other guys have gone, and I'm still not selected for the team. Can you explain that? I said, yes, absolutely. The last week has been brilliant, and I've observed you and I've seen that change in you. However, that doesn't guarantee that you get selected on Saturday because of that, because the player in front of you might be doing the same things as well. However, you are pushing closer to that place than you did 2 weeks ago. And if you keep going like that, your chances improve. But you cannot, as a coach, make promises to players. That is the biggest mistake or parents. That is the biggest mistake you can make at the beginning of the season. However, you have to be fair. You have to be fair. So, Craig, in that situation with how you approached me there, it's just saying we were playing a game and we were just blowing out the other team. Let's talk about football, the American football. We're blowing out the other team 73-10. And there's 15 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go. I'm probably going to give you a chance to come on for those last 10, 15 minutes to show what you can do. I think that's fair in that respect. But like you said, there's so many different variables.
No, I like that. But for coaches out there listening, avoiding, telling everybody up front that you're not going to make any promises to anybody about anything, except for you're going to do what's best for the team. And you're going to take into consideration factors that they may not even see, know, or understand in deciding who's going to be on the field. And so as a coach, sometimes you might take 2 people that aren't the best athletes, but they play terrifically together. And you put them on the same side of the field, and it makes your team better. But honestly, the 2 guys on the bench are better. They have better skills. If it's soccer, they got better touches. Maybe they juggle the ball better. Just things that you do.
They have a better understanding
together. They're not together. Yeah, but together they're not. Right?
Yeah.
And so then the second thing is, I think this is training for adulting, real world, is life's not fair. This will not be fair. I will make mistakes as a coach. Sometimes I'll play this person in the wrong position. Sometimes I'll play this person too much and this person over here too little. And that's just, it's going to happen every game. I'm going to do that. Letting them know up front, be transparent, that you're going to do your best. But here's the thing that I think coaches have to do to establish trust with their players. They have to let them know that we're not going to, it's like the thermostat. You don't set the thermostat and just leave it alone forever. No, if it gets hot, you turn it down. If it gets cold, you turn it up. With players, when somebody's on a trend line where they're getting better and better, I'm going to reward them. If somebody's taking things for granted and getting lazy, I'm going to play them a little bit less. I'm going to still start the lazy guy for a minute, but eventually I'm going to shift it. I don't like coaches that make a decision after camp. This is how it's going to be. And they go into autopilot and they stop coaching. They stop evaluating. And that discourages the players, especially the ones that aren't on the field, that keep getting better.
Yeah. Getting back to that, my very first book was 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach in 2016. And the very first chapter, the very first line of that book is set your standards. And under standards comes expectations. So we're going back there in terms of the beginning of the season, just like Coach John Wooden did, just like Mike Krzyzewski did at Duke as well, where I spent some time as well. They set their standards and their expectations from day one. No, they underpromise and aim to over-deliver, but they underpromise. So again, they're not promising minutes. They're not promising, the amount of time, or you're going to be playing, or you're going to be a starter, for example. That's already a massive start there right now. So the expectations are clear that there's, like you said, that there's no confusion of saying, well, I thought I was going to be a starter. I thought I was going to be getting X amount of minutes. So under promise is your best thing you can do as a coach. And also at the beginning is make it clear of what you're rewarding on. Okay? It's nice to win, but the attributes that it takes to win, this is what I'm looking for, is the amount, how you come to practice every day, how you deal with failure, how you deal with adversity, what your effort level is, what kind of teammate are you on a daily basis, what do you like off the field, what do you contribute to the culture of this organization or this team. Those are the things I'm going to be rewarding you on, that you could replace a player that has better skill than you, or the more talented kid that things just come easy to them, for example, or has the most points on the weekend. Those need to be clear, especially to the players and the parents, and understand this, is that the parent has this kid where they believe they've got the best player on the team, and so he's just an automatic starter. And when you have that attitude and that sense of entitlement, and you're not facing that head on from the beginning of the season, you've got a problem as a coach. You will have a problem as a coach. 4 games into the season, once that kid is replaced in the third quarter or whatever, and now the parent can understand why their star kid has now been benched in the game, for example. So all those things in the beginning, under promise is important. Nobody gets exceptions, no matter who you are. And you know what? There might be some that say, well, this is not the place for me. We're going to go somewhere else where my kid is guaranteed time. That's fine. Because, Craig, at the end of the day, you're going to save yourself a massive headache and massive problems later on down the line, because their parents or their players expected something that you couldn't deliver, and be realistic about. And now the worst thing you can do to your culture is, now as a coach, you're saying, I reward on these things, but then you keep putting the best player in who doesn't have those behaviors. He's late to practice. She has a bad attitude when they go down a few points. And now you keep starting them in the team. The other kids in the team see that, and they say, hold on a second. This is double standards here. Coach says that this is how we're going to be rewarded, but she starts every weekend with a bad attitude, or she's not a good teammate in the locker room. She's nasty. She's a bully. How does that work? Your culture is just going one way.
Allistair, I got a couple thoughts related to that. I agree with that. I agree 1,000%. No disagreement at all. I think that coaches need to understand what their key performance indicators are. What are their evaluation factors? that they're going to use to determine who's going to be a starter, who's going to be backup, who's going to play in a scoring role, who's going to be a defender. And then I think the second thing they have to do is they have to define roles for the team. If you don't define roles, the parents will define it, or the kids have already defined it from experiences from other coaches and other teams. If you're coaching a sport, you have to get everybody together and say, this is not what you did last year in the same sport. It's not what you've done in other sports. It's not what your mommy and daddy said. This is our program, and this is what our roles are. We have captains. Doesn't mean they're the only leaders on the team. We have starters. Doesn't mean they're the only people that are important to the team. We have practice and we have games. Moms and dads and fans and friends come to the games, but the practices are important, or more important than the games. And help people understand that, hey, you know what? If you're batting ninth in baseball, you're just as important as the person batting first. Because if you don't do that, what you get is the person that bats ninth thinks they're the worst batter, and then they bat consistently being the worst. And if they're pretty good psychologically and mentally, you'll find over the course of the season they keep getting worse and worse and worse, because they think that if they're batting better than what they perceive to be last, they shouldn't be batting last. So the kid's going through a psychological battle because the coach hasn't communicated the roles. By the end of the season, that player's batting 190, and they probably shouldn't be batting first. But I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I think you have to break down the generally accepted cultural norms of roles. Because if you don't, you can't maximize the performance of all your players.
Yeah, let's and I'll come in there, and I've got a great story for you, Craig. Is if you ask coaches who are working with kids, now let's categorize kids 16 and under, just for the sake of it. What is the main what should be the main goal of a coach coaching kids 16 and under, Craig? I'm asking that.
Development.
Thank you. Development. So they lose track of that because winning all that matters. And I get it. Is your job is also in a school or a academy. You do need to win to keep your job as well. It's just realism as well. If you're just not losing every season, you're going to be replaced as a high school coach or an academy coach or club coach. That's just reality, even at youth level. But development is the key thing. Now, coming from South Africa and the Southern Hemisphere countries, cricket. Let's just compare cricket to baseball if we can in terms of batters. In cricket, you have 11 players on the team, and 11 get to bat. Now, I know in baseball that's not the case always, because you have your pitchers and you have your shortstop and your catcher, etc., etc. However, what I've seen in some schools and coaches, what I think is brilliant, is sometimes that they will agree. Listen to this. They will agree with the opposition team or high school that they reverse the batting order. So the number 11 comes in number 1, and number 1 comes in at number 11. Okay, which I think is brilliant. Which gives those kids that are always at the back end of it a chance to face the first ball and face the first innings, and I think that's a brilliant thing. That's development right there. That's putting development before winning. And I think it's a fantastic proposal and object. Unfortunately, in the real world, I would say 95% of coaches wouldn't want to do that, wouldn't want to risk that. But that's what development is. That's what development is right there. Is you're putting your worst batsman first, and you're putting your best batsman last. And let me tell you, it's improved dramatically. The confidence of lesser batsmen that maybe wouldn't get a chance, or those who didn't get to pitch, or in cricket terms, bowl. They got to bowl first, and instead of bowling 7th or 8th when the game is practically over. So that's development, in my opinion. Not all the time.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Alistair, here's the interesting thing. How many times have you seen a 7-year-old and the parents are short? You see them at 16 and they're a foot taller than their mom or dad. Doesn't happen every day, but that kind of stuff happens. You can't predict where a person's going to be 5, 6, 8 years down the road. So my belief as a youth coach, not even 2 years. My belief as a youth coach is you should cross-train him by position. Like if I'm coaching baseball, probably with the exception of pitcher and catcher, first inning you're playing first, second inning you're playing second, third inning you're playing short. We're going to move you through the whole field. And I'm going to learn things about you that I didn't know, but for the fact that I gave you that opportunity. Maybe when you're in the outfield, you lose focus and you're a liability for us. But man, when you're a shortstop, you're on fire. And I've been playing you in right field, and I think you're not very good. But as soon as I put you at shortstop, you're the best shortstop we have on the team. And so cross-training by position is critical. And then I think the other part of it is, instead of having an agreement with the other side to reverse the order, you don't know when you show up for the game where you're going to bat. Because every single game I'm moving you around. Because I'm going to learn how you respond when there's nobody on, or maybe you're the fourth batter and the first 3 guys get on. How do you handle it when the bases are loaded? How do you handle it when you're the first person of the entire game to bat? You're the leadoff batter. And then how do you handle it when you're ninth? But you think you're better than everybody else, but you're batting ninth. Those are all mental wars and mental battles that athletes have to contend with that's going to prepare you for life after sport.
100% agree. And I love that what you said about playing players in different positions. I think every kid up until the age of, this is debatable, 13, 14, should be playing multi-positions to discover what is their best position. I mean, what do you know at 10, 11, what position is your position? And of course, at a very young age, and we'll take soccer, for example, or even baseball, everyone wants to be the striker, the one that takes the penalties. Everybody wants to be the starting pitcher. Everyone wants to be the opening batter, as you mentioned. Of course, that's kids, they want to be that person. But again, that's life as well. Not everybody gets to be that person. But mixing the positions, I think, is key as well. Up until 13, 14, everybody should play different positions. If it's soccer, you're playing defense, striker, wing, midfield, goalkeeper. And then, you'll figure out at 13, 14, you know what? I really feel I'm, with the help of, your coach as well, saying, we think this is the best position for you. I'll tell you why. Because of A, B, and C. You're very good at that. You're fast. You're fast down the wing. You cross the ball well. You would be really useful in this position. Those types of things. But being set in positions at like 9, 10 years old is crazy. That's not development.
Well, I think it creates more expertise when you cross-train, because if I'm playing a different position that I'm normally playing, I know where to put the ball, because that's where I want it when I'm playing center mid or whatever it is. And so it's like, you elevate the IQ, the sport IQ of the entire team by cross-positioning them, because now they see the game. So, like, for example, one of the things I find very interesting about coaches in every sport that has multiple positions, doesn't happen in tennis, doesn't happen in golf. They see the sport through the primary position that they play. Quarterbacks see the game differently than offensive linemen, than defensive linemen, than DBs, than fullbacks. And every football coach, American football, every football coach I know, they see the game through the position they play. They have limited ability to see the game from other perspectives because they see it through their position.
Yeah. Again, I agree with you, Craig, on that. It's also to improve your game IQ and to understand what, versatility is a key attribute of an athlete. Like you said there, it's not going to happen in tennis and golf because those are individual sports, or running or cycling, for example. But or ice skating, figure skating. But in team sports, for you to understand what other what other players, what their roles are and positions, and spacing is key. Like you said, multi-positional, multi-sports is important. I was listening to Roger Federer, the tennis player. Some of his growing up, until the age of 14, 15, he played multi-sports. Of course, tennis was his main sport, his major sport. But he would still play a bit of soccer and play a bit of squash and different games just to work his skills and improve his fitness and improve his peripheral vision, improve his reaction time, because there was some sports like squash that are faster. So, and this could be a whole different podcast and a whole different, longer podcast, Craig, about specialization in sport. That's another topic that we could speak hours about. But specializing too early, that's an issue as well. Also, fitness. I don't understand kids that are doing fitness at 10, 11 with specialist baseball fitness trainers or specialist tennis trainers or whatever, and all they're doing is just specific sports stuff. I don't get that. You need to, up until I believe 13, 14, you need to have as a variety of skills as possible. And let me give you one quick example. Is I remember I used to work in England, in Manchester, 1 week a month. So I'd fly from America to England every year for 1 month. I'd be there. I was working at this academy looking at young talent, tennis talent in the United Kingdom. And they brought this kid who was ranked number 3 in the country. So, superstar player, 14. And, I looked at the kid, and he was skinny and lanky, and hey, he's 14, he's growing. I get it. But there was not an ounce of muscle on him. There was not an ounce of definition on him. And he's 14, So what I always ask kids to do before they play is to warm up with different skills, a little bit of soccer, a little bit of certain things. And it was horrific. This kid had two left feet. He couldn't keep the ball in the hook for 2 times. He couldn't catch a ball with his left hand. And I said straight away, this kid isn't going to go further. I didn't say to the kid himself, but I thought to myself, this kid isn't going to go further than 15, 16 years old in his sport. Because up until this stage, he's the best skilled player. He's physically a little taller than the other ones, so he's beating them on practice time. He's just a better tennis player. But his athleticism will catch him out. Anyway, long story short, at 16, I heard that he had, dropped down the rankings. He was getting beat by kids that he used to beat when he was 12, 13. He was physically, just the other kids were just physically better than him, had caught up to him, and, he stopped playing tennis before getting to college. And that was a superstar player at 14, but had no athletic ability.
He didn't have any athletic ability because it wasn't developing. He didn't play other sports, so he could get it.
Well, because the parents thought our kid is just going to play tennis, eat, sleep, and drink tennis 24/7. And, he, like I said, he had zero skills, couldn't catch a ball with his left hand, and so on and so forth. And Craig, I've worked with over 11 Grand Slam tennis champions in the world. I've worked with the world number 1 in tennis as well. And let me tell you, all of them that I've worked with are multi-skilled. You play some basketball with them, or you play some hockey with them, with sticks. They're superior. They're good. They're very good at other sports.
No, I see that in the NFL too. I mean, guys that specialize too young. Parents, here's the hard part. When parents take, let's say, quarterback coaches to train their son, they are going to see incremental improvement in their skills. And they're gonna validate the coaching, validate the expense, justify it, and go, man, we're doing the right thing. And when every coach wants their athletes just to focus on their sport year round, everything's done year round sports. So the parents are like, yeah, son, you just need to focus on football. Well, he won't, just like that tennis player from England. That's a consistent pattern. That is a sport like path that is taken over and over and over again. Because yes, if all your kid does is dribble a soccer ball or whatever the sport they're in, for 3 or 4 years, they're going to be better than everybody else.
Exactly.
Until they're not.
Exactly. They'll get away with it until they're 14, 15.
Yes, and that's when the burnout hits, when they start seeing themselves slip. Like, I'm not as good as I used to be.
And this takes us back to the very beginning of the show, Craig, about dealing with adversity, setbacks, and failure. That now the other kids are caught up to you, and they're also just as skilled, but they're better athletes than you because they've spent a little bit longer doing other sports. And there's that whole vicious circle again of dealing with it. And now it's no longer easy to you anymore. The other kids have caught up to you. Because, like you said, the parents thought that they'd get a head start, and our kid is just going to eat, sleep, and drink football or baseball or whatever it may be.
And it also stands to reason this aligns with fine motor skill development. When you are just doing one sport, your fine motor skills are going to develop faster. When you're participating in multiple sports, your gross motor skills, your big muscles, are going to develop faster. But it's not going to show up as much. You may not be as accurate in shooting the basketball. You may not be as refined in your skill set in handling a soccer ball. But eventually, when you decide to focus on that sport, your base is better. Your gross motor skills are better. And so I see that's effectively what we're talking about is, yes, we could take anybody and turn them into pretty, like a kid prodigy, but they're not going to be there in college or high or pros.
Yeah. Craig, let me, I know we're short for time, but let me ask you your opinion on choosing captains for teams and leaders for teams. Should that be chosen by the coaching staff, or should that be chosen by the players themselves? What's your opinion on captains and leaders for teams?
I have a lot of emotions attached to that because I think too many people put value in being named a captain. And the people that are not named captain think that they can't speak when they see something. They don't feel like they can be the leader because that's the captain's job. So honestly, what I feel like should happen is neither. Coaches don't pick them because coaches are going to pick the people that are drinking the Kool-Aid. Players are going to pick the people that they want, that are not going to, they're going to take them where they want to go. So maybe not everybody wants to win a championship, so we want somebody who's not going to be as critical to us. So I'm picking my homeboy here. I don't think it should be either one. I think it should be organic. Every week, especially in youth sports, every week, whoever's going to go out and do the coin toss, who's going to represent the team, who's going to wear the captain band, I'm going to pick somebody different every week. And I'm going to, as a coach, it's going to be a reward system for what you've done this week. Have you showed up and showed out? Have you been coachable? Have you been a great example? Have you been a good teammate? Have you been a leader? Have you been like diving on the floor or jumping, going the extra mile? Then I'm sending a very contemporary message to the team about what I am rewarding, what my expectations are. And it's fresh in their minds. Because when at the beginning of the season, you have a parent meeting, you have a team meeting, you hand out your philosophy, your culture, your expectations, whatever you want to call it. They all forget about it 3 days later. But when you are recognizing certain people every week, it's contemporaneous. They know. And then I think that the other thing is, if a parent complains, you know what? Just ask your son, ask your daughter why they're not the captain, because they know. And if they don't know, I'll be happy to tell you, but I think they probably know. And I think that it should be fluid. Because here's human nature. I see this all the time in professional sports. I see it in lower level sports too. Everybody wants to be a starter. But once you're named starter, you start coasting a little bit. Then you want to be a captain. Well, when you get named that, hey, first couple games, man, you're a real captain. You're an exemplary leader. Then all of a sudden you start coasting. Because that's just what we do. We're human. We're looking for the next conquest. We're looking for the next, achievement. We've already got that. We're not even doing that well. So by having it be organic and have it be like current, the people that are doing the best, that are representing the characteristics of what you, as a coach, decide should be a captain, are the ones going out of the field for the coin toss or whatever it is. Your
Yeah, I do
thoughts?
this. I love that, and I'm glad I asked you that question because talking about development, we're not just developing better players and better people, but developing leaders and captains. So, how can you develop more leaders if you're choosing just one kid or two kids to be captain all season? So, I love that. I love that approach. That when you make those expectations and standards clear at the beginning, is that this is what you're going to be rewarded on, including the leadership and captaincy is going to be rotated. Nobody is the one leader, and you get your chance to. And I think it's very important to be clear that that might scare a few kids, especially that are maybe introverts or not as spoken. But to explain that leadership is not just about vocal. You don't need to be the loudest on the team or know the most. It's your example. It's your effort. It's your attitude you bring. That's leadership right there. You don't need to be the talker all the time. So it's important to empower them with that there's different leaders and different captain styles out there. You all don't have to be, Russell Wilson or Tom Brady. That would be great to aspire to. But, I think that's great. And talking about development, I think that approach that you're talking about there, Craig, is all about development of leaders and captains for later on in life. I think, if I'm not mistaken, was it Patrick Mahomes or one of the guys from Kansas who said that they also rotate the captaincy there? One of those, I think it was the Kansas City Chiefs that said they rotate their captaincy as well, which I liked. I might be wrong on that one.
I think they may. But think about being a coach and you've got a young man that's got it, and everybody sees it except himself. He's the only one that doesn't see his potential. And you want to help him come out of his shell. You can yell at him and all that kind of stuff. That's not going to work. It's going to go deeper in the hole. You just say, hey, this week you're captain. He might go, well, why'd you pick me? I don't think I should be. Well, I see things in you that maybe you don't see in yourself. And so I want you to represent our team this week, being the captain. Well, then you get to see that kid grow into what he already is, but it's growing is going on in his mind. He's always been doing it. Whereas if you pick captains, everybody kind of just goes, okay, he's the guy. No.
Yeah.
For most club teams, Allistair, what happens to them? They all disseminate to different high schools. They all need to be leaders in their own respective programs if they play high school sports. So just because you're playing club sports, you may not be the alpha dog, but you might be the alpha dog at your school. And if you're incapable of being a leader, but he's looking at you like, hey, man, you're the best. Why aren't you our leader? Well, he's never had a chance to exercise that muscle.
Yeah. And that's, again, just like specialization in sport, we could talk all episode about captaincy and leadership, but shouldn't that be the job of a coach, is to empower his players to believe that they're leaders? And like you just said there now, that player that came to you and said, I don't think I should be captain, and you're like, well, I believe that you're great in these certain things, and I think what you're doing right there is you're empowering them. And all you need to do is identify one or two strengths and say, you know what, you're great at this. And I want you to bring that out as much as possible on the field on Saturday or Wednesday or whatever it may be. And there you are. You're empowering a young man or young woman to learn how to lead.
Absolutely. Okay, Allistair, your last book, you graciously sent it to me, so I've got it a couple of days ago, and I skim read it, but it's basically 77 ways to achieve excellence, and it says the title is Mindset is Your Superpower. Give us an overview of this book and maybe the top 2 or 3. Let's say there are 77. Let's say there's 2 or 3 that you just can't miss. What are those 2 or 3 superpower mindsets?
Yeah, I think the most important ones are probably in the first 10 there. Not that all 77 are important, but this book is all about getting the best from yourself. It's about life lessons. There's some sport examples in there, some examples from the corporate world. It's aimed at anybody, but specifically a young adult, high school, college, 20s, if you were to if you were to like pinpoint like one generation, who would it be? Probably then more, but this is for everybody. And, some of those first chapters are, mindset is everything. And that's what we've been talking about in this podcast today. And it really is. Your choices, your habits, your routines on a daily basis. It's also where I talk about that you are your greatest project. So investing in yourself on a daily basis is important, be it through nutrition, investing in your mindset, investing in your health, movement, for example. I believe that everybody needs 3 wins a day. You need a mindset win, so you're learning something intentionally, be it listening to a podcast like this, be it reading 5 pages of a book, for example, but you're intentionally getting a mindset win. The second one is a movement win. Even 20 minutes of exercise a day, of walking. And people can't tell me I don't have 20 minutes a day. Everybody has 20 minutes a day. Even President Obama used to play some basketball at the back of the White House for 20 minutes at lunchtime. So if he has the time, we have the time. And then a mindfulness win. What is mindfulness? That can be either something towards where you're just quietening the mind. It could be a nap. It could be yoga. It could be meditation, whatever, for 20 minutes a day, if it's 20, even 10 minutes a day. I mean, those are 3 important things. That really the book is about you being your greatest project. And I really think I really enjoyed writing it. It's a lot of those lessons are things that I've learned the hard way as well in life that I can share. Things that I maybe wish I knew earlier when I was in my teens or 20s that I only realized later. So, that's what mindset is your superpower is all about.
That's outstanding. Well, one of the things that how it hit me was just you describing it. It's an inside game, not an outside game. It is working on you. It's working on how you respond, how you attack, how you prepare, how you train. It's about you. And what I think happens too often is athletes look at their circumstances. They look at the scoreboard. They look at the depth chart. They look at the starting lineup. They look at things that are signals. They're markers. But sometimes the markers are not accurate. You might be better than somebody that's playing in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
You may be going places and they're not. But that particular coach, you're not his or her flavor. But at the end of the day, if you keep investing in you, and those 3 wins, exercise, mindset, and mindfulness, that's awesome. I appreciate it. Well, Allistair, I appreciate you being on. Why don't you share with our audience where they can find your website, your gram, different things on social media?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Craig. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Very too easy. It would be Twitter at Allistair McCaw or on Instagram, Be Champion Minded. Those are the 2 ones that I'm most active on. And then, of course, my books are available on Amazon. So those are the 3 best areas.
Well, thank you for joining Pro Mindset. Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.